With Mike James joining the fray on Tuesday, the Wolfpack may still be looking to add another guard. Who might that be?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go. It's the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly that we all know and love. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. We saw that Louisville transfer Mike James joined the Pack on Tuesday, leaving us with one more scholarship spot to be filled. We had a discussion on whether or not we'd be looking for a guard, perhaps another big. Based on the recent interest that Kevin Keatts and the Wolfpack has shown, it may be another guard. We have two more names to discuss here on Wednesday. One of these names was recently on campus for a visit. I believe it was Monday. We will start with him. It is Marcus Hill of Bowling Green. He averaged 20.5 points, 5 rebounds, and 2.6 assists last year in the MAC conference. He is primarily a paint touch guard, doesn't really shoot a whole lot from the perimeter. In fact, sports kind of unimpressive numbers from the perimeter, but he does demonstrate the ability to get in the lane, get to the free throw line, get to the rim. That is likely what Kevin Keatts is taking some interest in here.
You know, the ability to put the ball in the bucket is the ability to put the ball in the bucket regardless of how it happens, right? It doesn't always have to be from deep. It doesn't always have to be the prettiest, most aesthetically pleasing thing. I mean, for Christ's sake, the leading scorer in NBA history is a guy that's known for putting his head down, getting to the rim. So, you know, I really don't see a problem with this young man potentially joining the team. Again, he's a guy who can get to the rim at a high clip and finish around the rim very well. So I think we'd be lucky to have him.
He's another guard that is relatively big in size. He's a 6'4" guard. And I believe the other day I saw somewhere on social media, cannot remember exactly where, but I believe I saw a staggering stat that 56% of his field goals came in the paint. So that just goes to show he is physical, is going to try and beat you in the lane, get to the rim, demonstrates some kind of playmaking ability in the paint. And when you have a guy like that, that can open up a lot of different things for other players. You talk about the importance of potentially Dontrez Styles being a three-point shooter. If you get Marcus Hill in the lane, that opens up more opportunities for a shooter like Styles or James or whoever it may be to create cleaner looks. And so Marcus Hill definitely can be a name to be watching for here. Trying to say this as respectfully as possible, I think there are some other more important factors in guard play than what Hill can give us. I would like to see someone that can do a bit more ball handling, can produce a higher assist rate, but nonetheless, Marcus Hill is a guy that can put the biscuit in the basket, and that's something to take notice.
And he also knows himself. You know, you talk about the 56% of the shots inside the paint. That sounds like a young man who knows where his strengths and weaknesses are. He knows where his bread is buttered, and he goes there. And that level of self-awareness can be vital to a team that's like, we just need a bucket some way, somehow. You're not going to have a guy that's out there chucking threes when he's cold as ice because, again, that's not his game.
So being that Hill was on campus here recently, you'd have to think that you might see a decision here sooner than later. The other name here to watch is Davon Smith. That name may sound familiar because we played against him when he was on Georgia Tech just a few years ago. If he were to come to NC State, it'd be his fourth school. He played at Utah this past season, 2 years at Georgia Tech, and began his college career at Mississippi State. This past year at Utah, 13.3 points a game, 6.3 rebounds a game, 7.1 assists per game. This came on 46.7% shooting and 40% from the perimeter. This would be a humongous addition for Kevin Keatts and the Wolfpack. And watching some of Smith's tape, he demonstrates speed, physicality, playmaking ability. I don't want to make a direct comparison, but the way that he can get up and down the court and find a bucket or find another player, he almost reminds me a little bit of Cat Barber. And that play style can immediately translate into what Kevin Keatts wants to do. And I think Davon Smith could do wonders for guys like Mike James, MOC in particular, taking over some of the ball handling responsibilities and being able to assist at a high rate. Like I said, 7.1 assists per game. That's an outstanding number. So I think Davon Smith would be a home run addition. However, in saying that, I do think he would be much harder to acquire.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this guy, when you talk about a true playmaker, a true point guard, a guy who really sets the table for everybody else and gets everything going, he is that to the highest power, because not only does he set the table for everybody else, his scoring also helps set the table. And it's rare when you see a guy who has that ability to score at a high level, but use it as his secondary weapon in the same way that Smith does here. So I really and truly believe that while he is a tougher fish to land, if we can land him, it'll definitely be worth it.
A lot of NC State fans may remember how close NC State was in landing Jaden Bradley last year. He was an Alabama transfer, ended up going to Arizona, although Kevin Keatts had the troops rallying for his services for quite a bit. It's kind of similar to that scenario in which I think Davon Smith would be a great system fit here. However, the ability that he possesses, he's going to attract a lot of high-end talent. And so for NC State, I think this is a situation where they'd really have to back up the Brinks truck to have a shot at him here. And when you're managing the roster and you already have 3 new transfer portal additions and you're trying to keep everyone else happy, this can be a big-time balancing act. And it's tough to imagine that this type of thing would come easy. That's another part where NIL really comes into factor here. I don't know if that's the ultimate deciding factor for Davon Smith, but nonetheless, this guy would more than likely attract a heavy toll.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, listen, a really good point guard is not going to come cheap. But with that being said, the value of him is worth every penny plus some, because, again, he makes your team a really great playmaker is a force multiplier. Everybody on the team is a little bit better because he's out there, and that's what this young man is. He's a force multiplier. So whatever he needs, if we got it, pay it.
Coming up next, we're going to be getting into some football talk. If NC State really does have a shot at making that 12-team playoff. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of the day is FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and MLB is now in full swing. FanDuel is the place to bet on each and every game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all coming on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on the Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local experts from Locked On are picking for every NFL franchise. This includes live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Middle portion of our Wednesday show, now getting into some football talk. I'm sure this is the first of a bajillion times we'll talk about this between now and August and so on after that. The new college football playoff format in effect this year is 12 teams. And for NC State fans who are licking their chops at the prospects of all the offseason additions, the perhaps weak home schedule, you're really starting to think about this, and NC State has a legitimate shot. And they do. We should feel like we have a legitimate shot this year. In this new format, the top 5 seeds will be the highest ranked conference champions, and then the remaining 7 teams are the highest remaining teams left, perhaps in that CFP poll. Now, for NC State, the easiest route to get into this thing is just win the ACC, and that is one of a couple goals that this team is going to be hunting for this year. You want to take all the other hubbub out of the equation, go win your conference. Situations like what just happened to Florida State this past year are now out the window. We don't have to worry about that, because if you win the ACC, you're going to be in the top 12. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So for NC State, how exactly optimistic should we feel about this type of deal?
I mean, I would say be optimistic for the fact that if you win, you're in. But less optimistic about the idea of an at-large bid. Let's just be honest. National perception has a heavy hand in whether or not you get an at-large bid. And I don't think that at the moment NC State has the national perception to not win the ACC and get an at-large bid. That's just the reality. Even despite what we believe and what we know, it just doesn't have that national perception. And so the path NC State, win and you're in, period. Like you said, eliminate the hoopla, eliminate the ruckus, eliminate the voters' ability, eliminate the, well, do they deserve to be here? Well, should they be here? Win and you're in, and that's it.
And connecting this to some of the talk about NC State's schedule this year, and when it was first released, there was a little bit of groaning seeing that we play Clemson and Tennessee in just a span of 3 weeks. And I believe one of our comments we said at the time was, if you beat Tennessee, that's great. It's going to be a ranked win. It starts off the excitement for your season. It kind of sets the tone for everything after that. Make no mistake about it. The game at Clemson is far, far more important to what the season outlook could be, what the conference championship outlook could be, what the college football playoff outlook could be. If you beat Tennessee, great. But if you lose to Tennessee, it doesn't exactly hurt you that bad. ACC games will be far and away much more valuable because you have got to find a way to get to Charlotte. And then once you're in Charlotte, you got to make sure you're taking that trophy home. There's really not any simpler way to put it. NC State should gun for the ACC championship and absolutely nothing less. Don't leave it up to the committee to try and beg and plead your case to get an at-large bid. Because if it's NC State and it's a team like, I don't know, Oregon or Penn State or, I don't know, Oklahoma, I think we know how that probably shakes out for us. So leave no doubt. You have to leave zero doubt. If you want to get to where you've never been, you have to do things that you haven't done in a long time. One of which is going down to Death Valley and beating those Tigers.
Yeah, and I think that, we talked a lot last year about how Boo Corrigan was literally just a spokesperson for the committee.
Right.
It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. It'll leave a lot of fans very salty, like, oh, Boo didn't fight for us, and that's why we didn't get in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's the rest of the committee. The reality is, regardless of what Boo wants, it's not a dictatorship. It's a democracy in which everybody has a say. Everybody has a hand in who gets where. And again, that's why I say eliminate the chance to need help. If you win out, you do not need anybody's help. If you show up and do what needs to be done in Charlotte, you do not need anybody else's help. And that's what this team is charged with. Not needing help, not needing anybody to believe in you, not needing anybody to function. It doesn't matter if you're 20-point underdogs every game. Get there and then make it happen.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Boo Corrigan stepped down from being the head of that committee. So even if you thought you had a guy on the inside that could maybe give NC State a little bit of a bump, that is no longer there. So, I mean, just kind of amplifies what we're talking about here. There is no reason to mess around with this thing. You cannot give them any plausible evidence to show that NC State should not be in this college football playoff. Obviously, everything we do within the conference is paramount first. But then when you do start to think about this college football playoff being 12 teams now, and the first round is on-campus games, I cannot even fathom a situation where Carter Finley is hosting a college football playoff game. If you thought it was crazy in the early months of September or the blackout game usually in October or UNC on a cold Friday night in November, a college football playoff game in Carter Finley Stadium in late December would possibly cause a black hole in the universe. It would be an otherworldly experience. If that isn't motivation enough, you talk about creating a home field advantage. I don't even know how to describe what a home field advantage that would be.
When you think about the Carter and all of its storied history, imagine adding a chapter, which is playoff college football. The first ever playoff home games that there were in the NCAA, potentially NC State seeing some of those. That would be a magical time. And
then you connect that to recruiting as well. And you talk about basketball going to the Final Four and winning an ACC championship and how that's currently paying off in the transfer portal. For NC State football to get into the CFP, it will do very similar things for this program. The state of North Carolina has several positions that have the number one player in the country coming up through the ranks now. I believe the quarterback from Greensboro and Faison just received that rank. If you want to attract talent like that, NC State has got to get to the CFP. That's another way that you completely turn a corner and change the trajectory of this program. And so winning an ACC championship is fantastic. Making the CFP is fantastic. But the dividends that you could get off of all of this, perhaps the most fantastic of them all.
Yeah, and I've heard from plenty of folks who are very close to the recruiting scene that there are a lot of recruits in North Carolina that just want to see that if they could stay home and win a ACC championship, get to the playoff, potentially win a national championship at home. And I think that's important for Dorton and this team to prove this year.
Coming up next, we're talking about the second annual NC State football celebration, connecting to this idea of recruiting and NIL. After a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is Monopoly Go. Listen, I have a competitive side. All of us do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it because it's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's the great twist on the same Monopoly that we all know and love, but you're playing on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is you can mess with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties just like the classic Monopoly. You can heist their vaults to make their riches your riches, and the leaderboards will show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon of them all is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with your friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now. It's free on the App Store or on Google Play. Our third sponsor of the day is Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. This makes getting tickets to MLB games even faster and easier. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they got it, all coming on an app that is super easy and effective to use. I mentioned the views from your seat. You can get a panoramic view from your seat on the app so you know exactly what to expect upon arrival. Toggling their all-in pricing feature will show the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, so you know exactly what type of deals you're getting. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Last couple of minutes of our Wednesday show, wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the second annual NC State football celebration. It's going on tonight, Wednesday night. Now, last year, rewind a little bit in your brains, that was one of the bigger NIL events in recent memory. I believe nearly $700K was raised just in a single night, and that was a spectacular accomplishment, really diving full head on into this new world of NIL. And Phillip Rivers was there. They had silent auctions were there. Scotty McCreery did a performance there. Dave Dorn gave a speech there. So to run this back this year, second annual of this type of event, that means we're getting somewhere. That means it was so successful last year, they decided to bring it back and probably try and take it up a couple notches. These are the signs that show you that NIL is not only working, but it's working right here at NC State. And these type of things are so important for fan buy-in, spreading awareness for NIL, because I do think if you could somehow run a study, I think you'd be shocked how many folks have no idea what NIL means, how it works, how to support it. And so these types of events like tonight are so incredibly important, and it's great to see NC State bring that back for year two.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think another thing that is super important to note here is even with the new ruling out of Virginia that, schools can directly pay NIL and all that, you still want to get fan support and still, do what you can in terms of that and having that booster and whatnot support for your NIL efforts, right? Until North Carolina officially passes their law, and even after that, you still want to see fans contributing something to that, to the NIL success and to ultimately the success of the program, because we all know It's if you got the best NIL, you get the best players, you get the best players, you get more wins. That's just how the game goes.
Probably the top thing that I remember from last year's event with Dave Dorn getting up on the mic and explaining to the crowd that they need as much help as they could possibly get in NIL, and that it was a new world for Dorn even to explore, but that he would compete his tail off. That has stuck with me ever since he said it. I mean, close to a calendar year ago. And watching what they pulled off last year, 9 wins when really nobody expected them to do that at the midpoint of the season, there should be absolutely nothing but full-on support behind Coach Dorn, behind this team, behind everything that they're now building, all off of NIL. You look at this offseason and the amount of insane names that came in through the transfer portal, and now what the expectations are for this team this year. We're building something here. It's taken quite some time to feel like we're actually turning a corner in football, but better believe it's here now. In events like this one, when you bring in the past legends, and we just talked about how cool it is to see Phillip Rivers back around Raleigh, back around Coach Dorn, back around this program again. These events really ramp up the interest in this squad and how everyone can get involved, and how if everyone's chipping into this thing, the stakes get raised.
Absolutely. And you know, Dorn talked about competing his tail off, but he not only said it, he showed and proved, right? Look at what he's done in the portal. This is not an accident. Look what he's done in recruiting, one of his best classes ever. This is not an accident. These things are not Dorn saying, hey, I'm going to compete my tail off in NIL and all that, and then absolutely crapping the bed and getting us one of the worst recruit classes in the ACC and picking up a bunch of nobodies out of the portal. These quality pickups are happening because Dorn and this staff are going at this thing with intention, with a plan, and giving it everything they've got to bring in the best players. That's
exactly right. It would be one thing if Coach Dorn went up and said that, and then everything just seemingly fell through. But the way that they ended that season, the way they attacked the transfer portal, they backed every single step of the way. They backed all of it up. And so for NC State fans, that will now require more participation. The more the merrier in quite literally every facet imaginable. And so to run back the NC State football celebration here for a second year, I can't imagine what the number is going to look like tonight. I would expect it to be a bigger number than last year, and last year's number seemed pretty astronomical. But with the silent auctions and the fundraising and just the overall brand awareness that is really growing for NC State football, this is another success. Again, one of these events where NC State football is also currently hunting in the transfer portal. It's these types of events that allow them to go in and be more aggressive in pursuing positions of need. And when you need a defensive lineman, or you need a linebacker, you need an offensive tackle, when you have these types of events and recruits notice this type of thing, saying, okay, I can go to NC State, I can get the playing time I'm looking for, and I'll be taken care of while I'm doing it. Okay, I think I'm sold now. This is exactly why they're doing this. And so this is a success. I can't wait to see how the numbers look after this type of thing. Fantastic night for NC State football.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that the second will go off without a hitch as well as the inaugural did last year. I'm excited to see it.
That'll do it for us here on Wednesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us what you think about Davon Smith or Marcus Hill potentially joining the pack here soon. Tell us what you think about NC State football's chances to make the first ever 12-team CFP. And if you were attending this NC State football celebration, let us know what you thought about it in the comments. Tell us your favorite part of this event in the comments. We will see you all tomorrow, but until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.